What is up? Week 2 in the books. 2023 season is cruising right along, guys. I'd like to welcome everybody to listen to Last Call, presented by Sports and Torts. Got a bunch of new listeners, so appreciate you guys hopping on board. Gentlemen, big uptick from last year already on people tuning in. So look, you two have got to continue to bring that A game people have come to know and love. So don't go poop your pants now in front of this big old audience. Gans, Lawrence, how we doing, guys?
Hey, good evening. I will say, so I spent my weekend, Indian Hills. We had our annual member guest golf tournament out there. Um, you know, Sponsored by the J. Stein Law. I had numerous people coming up to me asking how do they get a guest spot on Sports and Torts. They love what we do. It was actually, I mean, it was pretty cool to hear the number of people that are actually out there listening and interested to hear what's going on. So, to the millions and millions of attendants, we're happy to have you guys listening in every week.
Love it.
Perhaps we keep this as audio only and not go to the YouTubes if we want the audience to keep growing.
I think we look pretty good over here. Yeah, Lawrence, in terms of the golf tournament, I just love sponsoring things than not actually participating in them. I mean, that just seems to be much more in my wheelhouse, but it looked like a really good tournament. I saw there was a long putt was holed by our boy Brent Aronson to take home the title. Pretty exciting stuff out in Indian Hills this weekend.
Yeah, I think he had his best attempt at going viral. He drained about a 35-footer to win the whole thing. Congrats, Brent Aronson. And his partner Mike Lott, who I just met this weekend, and then he did a victory lap around the green, and was it actually took him about 4 minutes before he finally congratulated his partner, but he did do a victory lap. He was doing the bull dance, feeling the flow.
Yeah, Josh and I we played in a golf tournament this week. Our fortunes weren't as lucky, but I think we set a record for the most finished long drinks ever consumed at Cherokee.
I was gonna thank you, Mr. Gans, for the invite out to Cherokee. The finished long drinks. 2 thumbs up. I'll tell you. I mean, first I've ever had one. It will not be my last. We definitely won the competition for most of those consumes. Our score to par did not win, but hey,
middle of the pack.
Something. Yeah.
Middle of the pack. But perhaps we get a sponsorship. We've been working on Tito's now for quite some time. Topo Chico, and perhaps Finish Long Drink is looking to sponsor Last Call.
And the putting contest was sponsored by Lindsay Kessler Real Estate, and she had a cooler full of the Cutwater Ranch Waters, also quite delightful. Those go down very smoothly on a golf course or during tailgating or any sort of day drinking activities, being on the lake, being on the boat, you name it.
So early in the season, the games that Georgia has on their schedule allows for more golf activity on Saturdays, more golf talk, on this show, because God, it just starts slow. I mean, the game was about what we expected, right? Kind of very similar to the week before, kind of going through the motions, things to work on, some good things, some bad things, some names that showed up. Jason, you watched it, every play. Give us your initial takeaways.
My initial reaction was a little bit stronger than my thoughts now, call it 36 hours later or so. There was some frustration on my part in the first quarter. I didn't think Carson came out of the gates hot. I do think he settled in, and upon watching it again today, or just some of the highlights, I actually think he played better than I thought. Look, I'll say the good is what do we win? 48, 45-3, right? 2-0. Again, no one really watched the game outside of Georgia fans, so stay number one. I think the team did look a little bit more crisp this week. I would say the bad, we talked about this last week, the offensive line still does not look great. They're not getting a big push. We had a lot of missed tackles this week that I'd like to see get cleaned up. I think the ugly is our depth at running back right now. And did we need Andrew Paul? Did we need Dejan this week? No. But we will at some point. So that's an area of concern. But 2-0, move on to the Cox of South Carolina.
Lawrence, between putts, Lawrence,
Carson
Beck, watch the game?
I did. I watched the game. I watched bits and pieces on the golf course. Then I started to rewatch it last night and then finished it again this afternoon. I did see the text messages flying fast and furiously, already calling for BVG and Gunnar Stockton by somebody who may not be named that's on this podcast currently. But if you look at Carson Beck's stat line, it was pretty solid. Ball security in that first or second drive, whichever one it was, when he got the ball knocked out. That's not gonna bode well when we get into conference play. So he's got to take care of the ball in the red area. I agree with you, Gans. I'll even get a little more specific as it pertains to the offensive line. It only really feels to me it's the left side of the offensive line. I don't know if it's Ernest Green or Xavier Truss, but they got to gel a little bit better. We also missed some blocks. The wide receivers missed a couple of blocks as well. But I will say Brock Bowers was not involved with the game plan at all. I think I saw he got one pass, 3 yards. I think he was targeted maybe once or 2 other times. So I think that was intentional. We had 13 players catch passes in the game. And so it really is, to me, using these 2 games as tune-ups, get everybody playing time, trying to stay healthy. We did get an injury to Javon Bullard. I'm going to defer to the Jay Stein Law injury report for some more updates on that one. I don't know how serious it is. And Mekhi Muse is just like, he's almost like must-watch TV every time he's back there for a punt. And I find it awesome that Kirby calls him Waffle House because he's always open. So, we're not showing anything. We got out of there with a 42-point win. Some people, that was a push for them. Some people, it was a win. And for some people, it was a loss because I saw it anywhere from 41.5 to 42.5. But now we move on to conference play next week with South Carolina coming to town.
So as y'all know, me and Dane and the kids were there on Saturday. It's just always a great experience. It's a 10 out of 10, 10 times out of 10. Getting there was relatively easy. Took an hour and a half or so. We parked at Classic Center, ate lunch downtown, walked through North Campus. I always like taking that kind of direction through the law school and through North Campus Business School and just kind of doing all that kind of stuff, showing the kids. And then, the start of the game gives me all the feels every time, right? I've seen it 1,000 times, and they play the trumpet, they play the music, Saturday, and it just gets me. So they do a great job. Larry, your boy, Joey Chestnut called the dogs, the 16-time world eating champion, Joey Chestnut.
The hot dog king was calling the dogs. You got to love it.
Everybody's a dogs fan. I'll be honest, hand in the air, we left at halftime. It was pretty warm. We saw 30 something points. We saw interceptions. You hear they're calling Chaz's the kick six. You hear that? The kick pick six. No, the kick pick.
Kick pick.
The kick pick. Yeah. I'm sorry, the kick pick. But the stadium was great. We went to the bookstore afterwards, which, have y'all been there recently? Holy shit.
I didn't go often when I was in school.
It's like going to the Masters, the Masters swag tent. It just goes on. I got this new lid. You'll see it's the the old school UGA, the letters. I think I had this hat in high school games. Remember me walking around in Walton wearing this?
I definitely did that hat. Now with the G on the back though, that looks cool.
Yeah, the new G is good.
I have the red one with the Georgia kind of like in cursive with the circle on it, also by game. I bought a few years ago. That's a little bit of a throwback from our high school days.
Yeah, so y'all need to get to the bookstore next time you get up there. I think half the stadium emptied out at half and went there. But you mentioned Mekhi Muse, Lawrence, and he's like Isaac McKenzie was a few years ago, even going more further back, Damian Gary, guys get the ball and they can just go. But our guy, Dylan Bell, man, he, to me, if we're going to continue making comparisons, he's got like that Deebo Samuel thing going, right? Where you can kind of get him the ball in different places, running back, wide receiver, get him in space. And he just makes people miss. So, playmakers all over the place on defense. Watching Malachi Starks in person, holy shit. That guy is everywhere. Every play he's in on it. You think he's out of position, on a pass play, and he goes in and he makes that interception. So, again, him, Tyke Smith, our secondary, just ridiculous.
Yeah, a few things of note. So, I might as well just start with Carson because I mentioned it before. I think he's gotten off to a slow start the first 2 weeks. And I think a lot of it for me, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and Jason Gans 2 years ago definitely would have thought Jason Gans now would say this, but he just doesn't have the stet factor. He doesn't have the it factor. He doesn't have the confidence. And I'm not saying he's not confident, but Stet came out there and he had a swagger to him. And Carson doesn't have that yet. The first quarter was not great. I think, like I said, I settled into a rhythm. A couple of other things wanted to mention. Yeah, Lawrence, you mentioned Brock Bowers. Brock had that one drop, which is so uncharacteristic of him. That thing was going for 6. He had that drop. He also had it was a tough ball in the end zone. For anybody else, I'd say, okay, fine, whatever. But we're used to Brock Bowers catching that. In terms of Malachi Muse, I think it's a great story. Our friend Nick Adams, loyal listener and part-time administrator of Last Call, mentioned that he reminds him of Darren Sproles, and I like that analogy too. I agree with your analogies too, Josh, but I thought that Darren Sproles was a good analogy. I want to see what he does against South Carolina. I want to see what he does against some of these bigger, bigger, stronger, faster teams. And then last thing, with Dylan Bell, awesome, love him. That was such an exciting run. I hope we don't have to see him at running back all that often, and that's not a knock on him. We just need some stability there. We need some consistency there. Don't want to hate on this guy, but I did last week. I'm going to do it again a lot. Maybe he's injured. I don't see it with Kendall Milton. Maybe I'm wrong. I might catch some hell for this. I just don't see it. I want to love the guy. I want to see him break one off. I don't see him doing it though.
He did punch one in. Our California duo had some rushing touchdowns. But I'm with you. He looks a step slow right now.
Yeah, who do you like better? I mean, right now,
no, Dylan Bell's my favorite running back in Rod Burgundy. Burgundy are the two best out there.
Rod Burgundy or number 2 right now. And again, I think he's got a tweaked hamstring or something like that, so maybe it's not fair. But right now, I like Rod Burgundy better.
Listen, I mean, we haven't seen Dejon Edwards yet. I think obviously he's being held out for South Carolina. We haven't seen Phil McConkey or Ladd McConkey yet. He's being held out for South Carolina. But one thing I did love about that kick pick, whatever we're calling it, you can tell how much the team loves Chaz Chambliss. It's amazing. They mobbed him like he hit the game-winning home run in the bottom of the 9th to win the World Series after that pick.
Did you also see that the pass? It was thrown to a dude that was blocking. It
hit him in the heel.
He was engaged.
I know we talk about Chaz a lot, but he's everywhere too, man. Like he's active. He's around the ball. I agree with you, Lawrence. Like they were so pumped that he got that interception. So yeah, look, him, and then you got Cash Jones also wearing 32, who's pretty active as well. Good on those guys.
His touchdown catch was awesome, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all have mentioned Marcus Rosemary Jack Saint yet. If you have, I'm sorry to bring him up again, but getting him back, I think really calmed some people down, added that extra level to the offense. I think Carson kind of looked to him first, somebody that knows all the route tree and is very comfortable. So good getting him back. The other name who is officially now on the board, Seaside Spurlin. He's got a catch in the fourth quarter. Put it on the books. Our guy's in the books.
He's officially a dog. He's on the stat sheet. So good on Pierce. Like I said, he was one of 13 guys to catch a pass from the Bulldog Gunslingers on Saturday.
Very good. All right, so we got those 2 games out of the way. SEC play starts next week with South Carolina. We will circle back around that at the end. But let's get on to some other games. Keep this thing moving. Keep our promise of getting all around the country and not just doing Georgia talk. Last week we said Texas, are they back? Miami, are they back? Colorado, are they for real? I guess the answer right now is yes, and yes, right? Texas, Alabama had the eyes of the nation. We all watched it Saturday night. Lair, what you got?
I will say Texas is officially back. They look good in the trenches, offensive and defensive line. I feel like the Georgia program has done a really good job developing wide receivers that we now send to other teams. Adonai Mitchell, no longer AD. Don't call me AD. Was ridiculous on Saturday night. And Quinn Ewers, like he lived up to that Heisman potential. Texas, I think they gave, was it Bama's biggest home loss in like 15 years or something ridiculous like that? It was an ass kicking, quite frankly. And I will say Colorado is for real. They took care of business against Nebraska. Now Nebraska probably still not that good, but they are putting their money where their mouth is. And it's impressive. Coach Prime has these guys, they're ready to go. And they have a couple games upcoming. I think 2 weeks they have USC or Oregon USC coming up back to back. So we'll see if they're really for real then. But right now they look pretty good. Now I'll pump the brakes a little bit on Miami. Yeah, they beat Texas A&M, but man, Texas A&M isn't good. So I think there's a lot to be wait and see on the Hurricanes. But it was a nice win for them, even though they probably had like 45 fans in attendance down in Coral Gables.
I think we need to spend some time, a little bit more time on the Texas-Alabama game, because we're only 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, however you want to look at it, into the season. And obviously that was the best game thus far. Is Texas back? I don't know. I was impressed with them. They look good, but I think even more so, I think Alabama looks soft and weak. And this wouldn't be a podcast without positing this. Has Saban been fired yet? I'm kidding, but that is such a spoiled fan base, and you will hear the mouth breathers say that he's the greatest college football coach since my 2 years coaching intramural football in Athens. Alabama just looked very, very, very weak in the trenches. Jalen Milroe is a hot mess. The guy is athletic. He can run. He's going to die. They're going to kill him. He took 5 sacks last night. Some of them were because he was scrambling and running around. Herb Street kept talking about how great of a deep ball he throws, and he did throw a few good deep balls. The guy can't throw a 10-yard pass, though. He's not the answer. I said in our college football preview that I thought Alabama could go 9-3. It looks like 9-3 right now. Their offensive line was awful. Their defensive line was awful. They didn't look good. Texas did look good. A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell looked good. Quinn Ewers looked good. The others, Xavier, whatever his name is, look good. And their defensive line got after it. I think Texas is we'll see, right? Their schedule's pretty weak. I looked at it today. They should win every game that they have left on their schedule. They won't. All right. Put me down. Nick Adams, Tom Ludlam, mark that down. Texas will lose a game they shouldn't lose, probably in Fort Worth. Maybe to Oklahoma, I doubt it. But
it could be Kansas State in November. One of those types of games.
And I did say this yesterday. I am kind of rooting against Texas, because if we play them in the national championship, that's just going to drive up my ticket price in Houston, big time. Larry, when you were talking about Colorado, I almost pulled a Kenny's cutting in. They are not for real. They beat TCU, and they played an awful Nebraska team. Will they be for real? Perhaps. They are not for real yet. They are putting up big numbers. I do like that. In terms of A&M and Miami, I didn't watch it, admittedly, but A&M is just an absolute joke. They made, based on stats, I think it's Tyler Van Dyke, who is the Miami quarterback. The guy looked like, again, we've used this before, the next coming of Johnny Unitas. The guy just looked fantastic. So, the seat is toasty. At some point, the NIL money is going to shift to the buyout money.
I love it, guys. I threw you guys the 3-pack of games, and y'all's energy and excitement, you just took it and ran. I got a lot to go back and unpack from what we just discussed. My question is this. Last week, we asked if Georgia broke TCU. Did Georgia break Bama as well? Did Georgia break Bama? And because they were not the same Bama team we've been watching the last decade. They had no dude out there, right? Like, they had no dude. To your point, Gans, in the beginning of the preview show, you said, could anybody on Bama crack Georgia's 22? I think the answer now is no. Maybe Kool-Aid, although he got punked a few times. Saban, he just doesn't look like himself. I mean, you got Sark after dark taking him down, which is what, now the third assistant coach, Kirby, Jimbo, and now Sark. Quinn Ewers, I think one of us, we were talking about, he was throwing like pitching wedges, lob wedges out there, and just dropping them right into former Georgia receivers' hands. So that wasn't close. I mean, in years past, I'd have said Alabama's going to come back. They're going to make a run. But no, they never were going to. Texas was better than them all over the board.
Yeah, they don't have the receivers that they used to have, right? They don't have they've got Jermaine Burton, who's their top receiver. They don't have the Mechis, the Jamison Williamsons, the Devontae Smiths. They don't have the guys in the trenches. They don't have a quarterback. They're getting new coordinators every year. And I get that's a hallmark of top tier programs. Your coordinators move up. It's happening to Georgia as well, not at the same frequency. They're not there. This is in fact, the whole SEC West is kind of soft. We talked about it in the preview. Who's going to win the SEC West? I said, I think Alabama, but it's a toss up over there. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, I think it's the SEC in general looks to be down, and that's evidenced by the fact they've been getting smoked by these out of conference games. But I think in terms of the coordinator kind of carousel that they've had at Bama over the past few years, I think it's finally starting to catch up with them. They've had no stability whatsoever. And, the last 2 rounds of coordinators with Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien, they got run out of town on a rail. They went and did this, nationwide search. You think they'd have their pick of whatever coordinators they wanted. They ended up with Tommy Rees and with Kevin Steele, a retread and a guy who, quite frankly, wasn't impressive at Notre Dame to begin with. Jalen Milroe, I agree with you guys. I mean, he's got a little bit of AR-15 to him, right? He flashes at times, but then he's just underwhelming. But if he's the best they have, Alabama. Listen, I think they're floor games. I agree, 9-3. But at the end of the day, the SEC West is down. The SEC East is down. They very well could run the table, and we'll see them in Atlanta, and then we could have a chance to really officially put the nail in the coffin of Alabama.
My prediction's looking good, though, that there would not be an undefeated SEC West team. Ole Miss is the only one that's undefeated that potentially has a chance of winning it, and they're going to lose to us, but they will lose other games. Milroe, again, is not the answer, and I do think that there's going to be, I'm sure there are calls for quarterback competition in Tuscaloosa, but regardless if there's not, he's going to die. They are going to knock him out of a game. He's going to get killed. You can't run around like that. So they're going to have to go to plan B and plan C. And what's the old expression? If you've got 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks, and they have no quarterbacks in Tuscaloosa.
Exactly. Lawrence, you touched on it. The whole SEC out of conference showing so far have been less than stellar. We discussed last week. I said I really couldn't give a crap about how the SEC does, but I think it is something that we need to make note of. The SEC did get a couple of wins versus some Pac-10 teams late Saturday night. Pac-10 apparently was unbeaten on the season as a collective until then. So Mississippi State took down Arizona, and then the strangest game on the board, Auburn going out to Berkeley to play Cal. Does anybody care? I mean, Auburn fans did care, obviously. Was it like a 14-10 just snooze fest?
Snooze fest from all accounts, because I did not stay up to watch that one.
I watched the whole first half. I was affectionately referring to it as Rednecks versus Antifa. It was some ugly football. I was impressed, though. I didn't think that they'd fill the stadium, and they did fill the stadium. It was kind of loud, but it was just awful football. And then I threw in the towel at halftime.
USC looking good out there. Both y'all had them in your top 4. Look, their offense is going to be there. Defense, we'll find out, but they got them cooking.
Yeah, I also had Clemson, and I think that one's going to be a big L.
I did as well, so we'll move them out of the top 4.
I was debating Clemson versus Florida State, and I went with Clemson. I thought only because the Clemson-Florida State game is at Clemson. Clemson, another one, right, that it looks like the shine is off the turd. I mean, that game in the first half, I didn't watch it, but in the first half, they were running pretty tight with Charleston Southern up till halftime. They ended up blowing the doors off them in the second half, and that doesn't mean anything anyway that they're running it tight. But, I think that people aren't through. In fact, I saw an article today, and I joke around about the whole Saban thing. Has Saban been fired yet? But there is some, I don't want to say heat on Dabo's seat, but some of the shine is off the turd, right?
Well, Dabo has to adapt. He refuses to do the NIL thing. He refuses to do certain other stuff like
portal.
Yeah, exactly. The portal. So, he just has to adapt. But the other game with the out West team, I know that Lawrence was watching it close, got a lot of chatter from all of us. Oregon Ducks, Dan Lanning versus the Red Raiders, the sucker bet of the week. The bet your 401k from Gans on Oregon. The line was moving all over the place. Damn, Lawrence, how do you feel, buddy?
That was a tough one. If we're here on the trust tree, I will say when I make these picks, I never love them, but I'm looking at the data.
Here we go. Here's the hedge.
This isn't a hedge. I'm just saying I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at the public side, and I'm going with what builds those big casinos out in the desert. And going into the game, the public money and the number of bets was heavily on the Duck side. So I actually started to feel good that Texas Tech was going to keep it close. Now, we kept following the game. It was a back-and-forth battle. Going into the fourth quarter, I almost had a concession from Mr. Gans here, ready to eat crow. And then Oregon rolls off a 20-3 fourth quarter. They take the lead on a field goal with a minute left. And the only thing that couldn't possibly happen happened. The batted ball right into the gut of the lineman, and he takes it to the house. Bad beat. The sucker bet loses for the first time on the season. And let me tell you, it was painful. It was a painful L.
What was your perspective, Jason?
Well, first off, I want to address his excuse there.
There's no excuse.
The analogy I would that just pops in my mind is, and this isn't me, but I loved my wife until she started cheating on me. And she wouldn't have cheated on me if she didn't run into her college sweetheart. And that, come on.
That's a terrible analogy. I wasn't making an excuse.
Football is football. My take on the game was, being that we're in the trust tree, I actually thought that Oregon was going to blow the doors off of them. So the fact that it was 38-30 was a little bit too close for comfort from my 401k. But that's why they play 60 minutes, Larry.
It was a bad
again. The other game that I called out was Utah Baylor. When that one came down to the wire too, I think it ended up being a push when Utah scored at the very end of that game. But there were some exciting games. There was I think again there was some week one overreactions. Gans, if I would have told you that Oregon was -12, you would have jumped all over that too. So
probably,
yeah. I mean, it was a fishy line. It was a fishy line, and quite frankly, the Red Raiders should have covered, and that was just a bad beat. It happens.
I would have taken Utah also, for the record. I didn't have the conviction on that one, but I would have taken Utah. I probably would have taken Alabama. I didn't love that. I think I said that the whole time. I had zero conviction on that. I was surprised that Texas won by 10. I thought Texas, if they won, and as they did, it would have been 3.
Well, excited to see what the sucker bet of week 3 is going to turn out to be. So let's start looking ahead to next week. Like I said, Georgia starting the SEC schedule. We've got South Carolina, the Gamecocks, coming to town, who've not shown too much the first couple, their first little bit. We kicked their ass last year. I read that let's back up. The 3 most dominating games of any team versus another team last year all involved Georgia. It was Oregon game, South Carolina game, and then TCU game. I don't know how they compute it, but it's some deal with whatever. So we had the second biggest domination of the year against South Carolina last year. Gonna happen again?
Hey, Gans, I'll let you start because I know you got a bone to pick with Coach Swag Beamer.
We haven't shown anything. Their offensive line is terrible. I think that Spencer Rattler is hot garbage. He might make me eat those words. I think it was Coach Donnan last year on a podcast I was listening to. He said the guy is great against air. He's like the best. The reason he was so highly recruited, he was the best, 7-on-7 quarterback out there. But there's this thing called an offensive line that has to protect you. You have to scramble. They do not have one. I would put Walton High School and Daniel Calhoun, their offensive line, up against South Carolina's right now, and I think Spencer Rattler would take it. I want to see the Dogs just pin their ears back and get after this guy, make some bad decisions, let Malachi Starks just roam the secondary. I like the Dogs big time. I think I saw the line at 26. 27. That's a lot. But I'm thinking, 42-10. So maybe I do like the Dogs covering.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think after last year's game when Beamer was screwing around with the AC in the locker room, fact check me on this one, but I heard on the radio today that maybe we don't play South Carolina in 2024. Is that true?
I don't know. I don't think we do. That's right. I don't think we do.
So this will be the last time that they are like a regular on our schedule, and I think that Kirby's going to lay it to Coach Beamer. The trenches is where these games are won. We're going to dominate them. I like what I've seen out of guys like Marvin Jones Jr., Warren Brinson. These guys, Kristen Miller played great, I thought, on Saturday. I think they really are going to get after the Gamecocks on Saturday. I see a very similar type outcome that we've seen in the last couple of years. 27 is a lot of points. I think we do cover the number. I think it's possibly hanging a 50 burger on these guys.
Agreed. If history is to teach us anything, it is that games like the first 2 weeks of this season, Kirby does not throttle teams. Like if there was a line, we never cover it in those kind of games. This is the kind of game that we will cover it. I think it's a 50 burger, and I think it's a less than 10 burger, and it's an ass kicking. And it is what it is. Later, everybody feels great about the Dogs again, and we celebrate. The schedule around the country and around the SEC kind of sucks next week. I went through it, and the only games that I could even really pull out, I mean, Tennessee, Florida used to be a thing. It will be interesting to watch those two teams and see if Tennessee is as strong as people think, and if old Florida and Billy continue to suck. I don't know. I mean, do y'all care to watch that one?
I'll watch it because it's 7 o'clock. I don't think we're doing anything this weekend. Historically, 5 years ago, I'd be rooting hard for Florida only because, we look at Tennessee as probably the biggest thing on our schedule. But candidly, I don't give a shit, right? Let us, we control our own destiny. We have the past year, so I don't need any help from Florida. I mean, I would assume Tennessee. I think Florida sucks, and I don't think Tennessee's as good as they were last year. I think I saw 4 points. Tennessee was favored. I'll defer to Larry on that, but I think Tennessee probably wins by 14.
8.5 is the line I saw this
That's not the
afternoon.
wrong thing. Yeah.
Tennessee historically does not play well in Gainesville, but if you want to go to the Bobo transitive property, Florida lost to Utah. Utah got taken down to the wire by a Baylor team that got beat by Wyoming. So if you use that transitive property, Florida is hot garbage.
Baylor lost to Texas State.
Texas State, sorry, it was
Fighting Armadillos.
Yeah, Texas Tech lost to Wyoming. They lost to the Texas State Fighting Armadillos. So Florida is a bad football team, even though they won whatever directional school they played this past weekend. Joe Milton, probably, I think he actually got booed in Tennessee this past week because they only beat Austin Peay by 17. He has got a lot of similar traits in terms of like Jalen Milroe in AR-15 that I called in the preview show, flashes of brilliance, but just ridiculously inconsistent. Tennessee should go down there and win by double digits. But who knows? Weird things happen in Gainesville.
I thought you were looping us in there with the Larry's Losers, but I guess,
dude, as we record this on Sunday night, I can't yet give with confidence the Larry's Losers. I'm going to have to post it to the Facebook page later this week. I got more research to do, Red.
Look at that.
Right,
I was going to say, what other podcast out there is somebody using the transitive property to start picking games? I mean, golf clap to that. But so yeah, it's Sunday. Usually we record on Monday. Laurence, is there that much more data available in 24 hours to allow you to make a pick, or is this you just a little you're still stunned from the punch in the face from the Oregon Ducks? You just can't rally back yet.
I need to gather myself. I need another 24 hours of some line movements and some more wagers coming in so I can start to review the data. The analytics tell all, man. It's Moneyball.
Are any of the games though that you're looking at jumping at you? Any of the 6-pack you can say at least have your eye?
So some of the games that I looked at, the Tech Ole Miss was one that you had talked about this weekend. Ole Miss is 18.5. I mean, they just beat Tulane by 17. I think Tulane is a better football team than Georgia Tech. Michigan State is playing Washington, and Michigan State has got a lot of controversy around that program right now. Washington is minus 13. So that one, I mean, that could go either way. And then the other line that I looked at today, which jumped out, is Texas plays Wyoming. They're a really big favorite there. It's 28 points, and I would imagine there's going to be some level of a letdown after the big game against Alabama.
Stay tuned this week. Big Lair will come up with a game that is the sucker bet of the week, so we'll get that out there. Any games you're looking at, Jason, that have your attention for next week?
Not really. Florida, Tennessee. I mean, I'll watch the Ole Miss Tech game. Two teams, both Florida, Tennessee, and Ole Miss Tech are 4 teams that are on the dog schedule. So it's more just scouting the opponents. To your point, it's kind of a ho-hum weekend of games. I think I might head up to Athens to watch the Dogs beat the Cocks, but we'll see. TBD there.
Yeah, I mean, all of us are much bigger college football fans and pro fans, but the NFL does win the battle on scheduling and intrigue games. I mean, you look at week 3 of the college football season, you're just like, ugh, I got nothing. All right, the other big segment that people are loving, man, the Jimbo of the week, the Jimbo Award. They might really like what's coming their way this way. If I have any prediction of what your brain is doing.
It was tough this week. I watched a lot of football. I was at home, and there were some boneheaded calls. There were some stupid things. Nothing really jumped out to me. In fact, I had to go to my colleagues here, Laurence and Josh, and kind of ask for suggestions. And because there wasn't a ton of week one, there was a lot to work with. This seems like a lazy pick, and it's not. I did put a lot of work into this, but the Jimbo of the week this week goes to its namesake, Jimbo Fisher. The fact that he rolled into Coral Gables and just got the shit kicked out of him in the NIL Bowl for 2 years in a row, it's inexcusable. The guy is just trash. He brought in Bobby Petrino, supposedly handed over the reins of the offense, and then let Miami put up 48 and make their quarterback look like Johnny Unitas. It's coaching malpractice. He's in fact at this point just stealing from the state and from the boosters. So Jimbo, you sir are the Jimbo of the week.
I watched a little bit of that game. Stadium was half empty, half full, depending on your perspective. There was not a ton of Miami fans there. And as Texas A&M is driving, they have a 4th down in the red area. They're going for it, and they jump off sides. Like there wasn't even crowd noise to affect it. It's a poorly coached team. They have recruited. They have probably, let's take Georgia, maybe Ohio State off the table in terms of talent, top to bottom. They're probably a top 5 team when it comes to the number of stars on their roster, right? They have recruited very, very well. And the fact that Jimbo can't beat Miami, it's embarrassing. If I was an A&M fan, I would be like Sean Traub and digging graves in the backyard and be on the Ag event going bananas.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I meant to mention that as well. They have a ton of talent on that team. And last year we knew exactly what his buyout was and when it went down. And they've got to be at the point now. Like, there's nothing that they could do. What are they going to? I thought that they would be better this year, just again because of reversion to the mean. I'm not sure that they will. They'll do better than 5-7, I would assume. But at the end of the year, it might be time to cut bait and just suck it up and pay the buyout.
This is what we know.
The question is, who's going to go after Coach Prime?
We'll say that for next week. This is what we know. The Mets are going to Met. Jimbo's going to Jimbo. And you know what? He could win the award every week, but sometimes they're just more obvious than others. So I'm on board, full approval, full go. He's got it. All right, gentlemen, good stuff. Appreciate y'all being flexible with schedules, doing this a day early. Look, the show must go on. I mean, we've got jobs, we've got lives, but this is something that's got to happen. So appreciate you guys very much. Thank everybody out there for listening. Hope you all enjoyed this. We're going to keep coming at you every week. Look for some stuff throughout the week on the Facebook page and all that good stuff. So go Dogs next week. Gans, hope you go to Athens and bring home another dog victory.
Go
Later,
Dogs.
boys.
Go
Thank y'all
Dogs.
for listening. See y'all later. Go Dogs.